fanboys and fangirls. Welcome back to Random Fandom, the podcast that celebrates all things pop culture and fun. And with me here is, as always, Chen from New York. Hi, Chen.
Hi, Shiri from Israel.
How are you? It's been quite a week.
Yes, it has. So this question is complex. I'm okay. Yes, cons are overwhelming.
Yes, it's been a very exciting couple of weeks for both of us. And this past week, we've both been to cons. You were in New York Comic Con, which is huge. 3 whole days in New York Comic Con. Surprised you can still speak. And I was in the Israeli equivalent, it's called Icon TLV. Also was there for 3 days. And we both have lots to talk about and lots to share.
Yeah, absolutely. I have what I call the post-con brain. It's like it takes a few days to be integrated back to society. But absolutely. I keep saying that between you and I, have been to cons 6 days in a row because I've been to Comic-Con New York Thursday through Saturday, and you, I believe, started Icon on Sunday through Tuesday. Right. So, and I skipped the last day. Like, I knew ahead of time that I could live without it. It's also family day, so if we already have 10,000s of attendees, it just multiplies on Sundays. So, yeah. So, I refer to it as Hell Day. Yeah, I was like, I'm gonna sit this one out, that's fine. But, no complainings. People keep asking, how was it? Everybody's just expecting you to say so much fun, but cons are complex because there's definitely room for frustration, especially with the big ones, and people have been saying that attendance-wise, New York Comic Con has actually suppressed the one in San Diego, which is the one.
Surpasses.
Yeah. In terms of
it's even bigger, you're saying.
I don't know if it's bigger in terms of events and locations, but in terms of attendees at this point, yes.
Really?
And isn't that crazy?
It's very interesting.
News to me too, but I've heard a few different people who were qualified to say something like that. So, there's just sometimes there's frustrations and letdowns, and in a big con you have to be accepting of the fact that it's just part of the reality, because there will always be something that you wouldn't get to do, and there will always be something that that you really wanted to do and you missed, like a signing or something of the sort. So I think you need to adjust your expectations, and scheduling your con schedule is a technique. At this point, it's something that you just need to be smart about and know what to prioritize, and also be prepared that something's gotta give, and it's up to you sometimes to choose what to give up, and sometimes it's not gonna be up to you.
Yeah, you're gonna miss some stuff either way.
Yep, indeed.
So we both spent our days having more or less fun. Very hot here in Tel Aviv. It was blazing. But a lot of people with really amazing cosplay outfits and so much enthusiasm, and I love that. That's why we make this podcast, because we just love this. So we talked to a few people. We may have little sound bites of people we talked to, but I think before everything, what's been going on in fandom in general?
Yes, our little Fandom Roundup. I'll just add before that yes, like you said, we'll have a few interviews throughout the episode. It was really nice to be among fans. And also, if you guys choose to check our Tumblr and YouTube, we'll also try to put some pictures, especially of the people we've spoken to, and soundless videos, just kind of in the background of our beautiful voices. So if you want a bit of a more visual experience this time around, we will try and give it to you. So feel free to check it out. That's about that. So let's start with our Fandom Roundup before we move to actually talk about the cons and what we got to do. So let's start with something not so great, to say the least, and that's Harvey Weinstein.
Boo.
Boo. Total boo. And
yeah, another one.
hopefully another one bites the dust. That seems to be the case because he's been fired from his own company. It's not exactly fandom, it's more like showbiz related, but so many of us have consumed so many of his films over the years, and just, there's so many problems that you can see in both fandom and in quote unquote the real world, or showbiz, if that's something you can refer to as the real world. But Harvey Weinstein, a super producer, very famous,
very powerful man in the industry.
Another powerful man in Hollywood that throughout the years, his movies, I believe, won more than 300 Academy Awards. Stats are crazy.
Wow.
Yes, I actually started reading an article in the New York Times about it. I'm sorry, the New Yorker, which I'll send you and maybe even put here. We'll see, because I'm not done, so we'll decide later. But it's just really heartbreaking, and I feel like because of the cons, like both friends back home that I've been trying to talk to about this, and both people here in New York weren't as, that's what I mean by like, you're so out of it during the con that it's almost like you come up for like air at the end, and all of a sudden you get all these news and you're like, no.
You still haven't said what the news is.
Yeah, the allegations, the very concrete allegations against him that he's being sexually harassing and assaulting women that he's been working with for more than a decade, since the 90s. And I believe I read that part of a 10-month-long investigation has revealed more than 13 women who, came forward to talk about him. And I have to say, like, one of the teeny tiny stories that I heard, and that's not even like sexual harassment, that's just being a dick, was that he was telling Haley Atwell, my love, a few years ago when they were working on a movie together, that she shouldn't eat as much because she looks like a fat pig. And I'm like, that alone would have put him on my shit list. So
it's always amazing to me that the men who look the most like fat pigs can get away with saying things like that.
Of course, because men can get away with anything. Yeah, but people keep posting stuff about it, saying how timely it is. But the problem is, it's always timely, which I'm sure you will agree, as you spend half of this icon volunteering. If you want to maybe tell us about it.
Sure. Well, as part of my day-to-day life, I have been a volunteer at the crisis center in Tel Aviv for about 11 years now. Basically, the sexual assault hotline. I sit there and I talk to women and sometimes men who need help and assistance, and just someone to talk to when they fall. This is a very hot button issue for me. And this year, for the first time, I also volunteered at the con. They have a fairly new, it's only been like 2-3 years, I think, fairly new team of people that are officially kind of handle this whole conventions, especially when very young people are going, can be a hotbed to sexual assault, a lot of inappropriate touching, remarks. A lot of people go there and they get triggered everywhere, and a lot of personal space is not respected. So this has been going on for years and years everywhere. But since we want to have this be better, we made this team of people we have this phone, anyone can call it. We'll see what the situation is and we'll try to diffuse it. And if someone is hurt, we'll help. And so in previous years, it wasn't such a 24/7 kind of gig. And they assured me that it's not a big deal. It's nothing like I'm used to when I'm at the crisis center. But it turned out that this year it seems like people really took to heart the fact that they have somewhere to call, someone to talk to if this happens to them. And we were like all the time handling situations, which is very depressing. It was like never a break. Every second of the day there was something happening. Because it's a huge complex. A lot of people, it's very hard to control it. A lot of very young people who don't know how to handle their personal space, their borders. They don't know. It's hard for them to say, this is what I am okay with, but I'm not okay with this. and then it takes them longer to figure out that what happened to them is something traumatizing, and it's very hard to control. But we were on it. It came to the point where the third day of the festival, that's all I did. I didn't even get a chance to go anywhere. I didn't get to talk to people. I handled a very sensitive case for hours. So my con was a lot about that. But I'm fine with it.
The joy.
It's not a joy, of course, but it's very good to know that people know that they can approach us. Because as we always say, if people don't call the phone, it doesn't mean that these things are not happening. It just means that no one is reporting. And we would like them to be reported and to be handled. So we know who are the people that are dangerous and bar them from coming to the con and etc.
No, yeah, absolutely. And here we talked about this, I believe, in the past, maybe not in an episode, but like among ourselves, that here you see more and more signs in cons that say cosplay is not consent and zero tolerance for like sexual harassment. And it's been interesting because I haven't experienced, I've experienced annoyance by people who think they can say whatever they want, but I haven't experienced like sexual harassment in a con. And it was interesting because earlier today, Gail Simone, who was at Comic-Con New York, she actually tweeted about it because she encountered this lovely lady at the airport. And they've been talking about the cons, and she said she's been wanting to go for years, but she's been afraid. And that kind of launched the discussion of like, are cons still not a safe space? Are there a safer space nowadays, but people just don't understand or don't realize how much effort is being made into turning cons into like a safer space? So all of it it's clearly very relevant, and I would love for us to speak about it at length in the future.
Yeah, we'll try to get into it and on a larger scale, but for now it's just something to point out.
Absolutely.
There is a forward movement on this issue. There's always something that happens that is better than it was last year.
No, yeah. And with Harvey Weinstein, people we live in a time when, yes, people are still afraid to come forward, and that's very understandable, but when they finally do, they have such a huge support from the internet. Then now his name is being, dragged through the mud, which I'm totally okay with. And I think he's gonna lose everything. And people finally see that there are consequences to this sort of behavior. And like people have been saying, this whole locker room talk and boys will be boys excuse argument is just not valid anymore. You can't keep saying that. You can't joke about it. It's not gonna go away. People are ready to point out someone and say what you're doing is not okay. Now you're gonna pay the price.
Well, I'd love to be there with you, being so positive about it. But I have to say, when it comes to people of great power and in Hollywood and big business and stuff like that, I don't think that he's gonna suffer unless he goes to jail and actually do time, which he probably will do a lesser time than other people might, than a non-white person would, than a non-rich person would. If it goes that way, he will probably be okay, because that's what happens. I guarantee you that the number of people who come out and say this is not a behavior that we will ever support, there's no excuse. It doesn't matter that it was a different time. We don't accept that excuse anymore. And people who are there for the women who got molested or assaulted, I guarantee that there are just as much people who will say, oh, he's just being, harassed himself. What are you making such a big deal out of it? There's always backlash. Every time we take a step forward, there's a backlash, and it's very hard on the people trying to survive this, the victims. I don't like the word victims, but I don't know what the word is in English that's not so judgy. It's very hard on the victims, but I think all in all, we're doing better. It just takes very small increments. And it's on a very small scale. It doesn't happen on a large enough scale, I think. So, I don't know. I think he's going to be fine. Big actors have done horrible things. They still act. people are still like would pay good money to be in a Woody Allen movie, which drives me crazy. Actors that I respect constantly going on to work with him, which drives me insane. Same with Roman Polanski. Same with a lot of other people. Johnny Depp. You know, the list goes on and on and on and on. Look at.
I agree with you.
This is me starting and not being able to finish. So we
No,
need to devote time for this, but not now, maybe.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you. I agree with you. I'm hoping, I guess, we'll have to wait and see. I think we're starting to be at the point that what goes around comes around. And with him, they have him on tape from like a sting operation from like a year and a half ago, admitting to groping someone, and he's been fired from the company that's named after him. And that's just, since the story broke. So, that's...
Okay. And yet the president of the United States had some unbelievably crude, horrible, terrible things. And he's the president, He's not going to get any consequences for that. So...
All right, let's move on.
The frustration is big.
Oh, my God.
Let's move on to fun things.
All right, so in bittersweet, somewhat bittersweet, I will say that this week marked the release of the new trailer of Star Wars, and it's very bittersweet because it's kind of like pulling at your heartstrings because of Carrie Fisher. It's I can't wait to see it. I heard it's a very big movie for her. I kind of feel like I miss her on a daily basis. I feel like the world would be a better place, especially today, if she was a part of it. So. Just wanted to mention that trailer's out. On another matter that I don't think you probably haven't heard yet, and I was like, oh my God, how are you going to react to that? So,
okay.
Remember how we spoke about the biography of the writer of My Immortal?
Oh my God, what?
It has been cancelled.
The book?
Yes. Will this story ever end? So.
I hope not. I hope it never ends.
It never ends. When she announced on her Tumblr that her publisher confirmed her identity using documents, now apparently it's been discovered that these documents have been forged.
So it's not her?
So it appears like it's not her. She even shut down her Tumblr. She's like, MIA.
I don't believe this.
The mystery continues.
What is going on? What is this? The power that this piece of fanfiction has?
Well,
she literally tried to say that she wrote it to get a book deal, just like that other girl said that it's what? I'm so confused.
I know, like, someone came forward, I guess, on Reddit or something, and said that she's not really Native American, like she's saying. She's from a white family. She's never been in the foster care system. So, of course, at this point, we don't...
What?
Yeah, so we don't know at this point what's true and what's not. Well, we do know, like, the article I read about it was really funny. It was like, the mystery remains whether my immortal was intentionally horrible or, like...
Oh, my God. Maybe aliens wrote it. I just don't know what to say. It's amazing. I hope there's just more and more unfolding to this immortal thing. Always give me news like that.
It's apparently it's the gift that keeps on giving, if you can call it a gift, but
I'm thinking of writing a book or something and just saying that I did it and see where it takes me.
Well, maybe don't announce it on your podcast, but, take a month and revisit this idea. Who knows?
I didn't think it through.
What we learned from this is that it's very easy to fool the bestseller list of the New York Times. It's very easy to fool publishers. It's like, oh, great.
But it's not very easy to fool the fans.
Exactly. Isn't that amazing? The fandom always prevails. The fandom always provides.
You know why? Because they do the research that maybe the journalist won't do, or they don't know where to go to do. But the rabid fans, that's nothing for them. They will get to the bottom of it.
Yeah, it's another, it's another aspect of the passion, and thank God, because then we
and
get
obsession.
And then we get amazing news, like the story that never ends.
Just like My Immortal.
Ah, my Immortal.
Okay, that was great. Thank you for
Yes.
that.
Of course, I thought you might like it.
you.
So I have one more celebratory thing to say before we move to the Comic-Con stuff. So Pushing Daisies is celebrating a decade.
Wow.
Yes, I know, and it's interesting. I found it interesting because I read about it just before going to Comic-Con. I found it interesting that Comic-Con, there was no event for like 10 years for Pushing Daisies, even if like on a small scale, but there was nothing. Bryan Fuller was there for American Gods, but so he actually spoke to Vanity Fair to, celebrate the occasion of, the anniversary for the show, and he said that even today, he would have dropped whatever it is that he was doing at the time to go and make more Pushing Daisies. Which is amazing because, considering he's currently working on American Gods and people always ask him about Hannibal, I love that he has such a special place in his heart for this special show. And he said in this article that up until today, this is the most precious show to his heart. And he spoke how, how being a gay man, which I didn't know was gay, not that it matters, but it's just like an interesting tidbit. Being a gay man during, the time of the AIDS as a plague, like, he himself, I believe, is not sick, but, he lived through it with friends around him. And he said that subconsciously, maybe living through that kind of led to the metaphor that the show is built around, like a person who is insanely in love with someone, but he cannot physically touch her.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the tragedy of it.
Yeah, and he says that of course he's never gonna turn down any option of like a future for the show in many different formats like Netflix or whatever. And he's like, I think he's he keeps repeating how much he would love to have it as a musical on Broadway if it's written by Tim Minchin. As long as it's written by Tim Minchin, that's like his.
Well, he has Kristen Chenoweth right there.
Yeah, I was gonna
So
say.
he's golden.
Absolutely.
What else do you need, basically?
Oh my god, that show. I loved it so much.
I know that there's a big fandom still going on for Lee Pace. He's still very much, I see him all over Tumblr. Maybe it's just the places I go.
He
But,
was doing all the Hobbit films, like, and Lord of the Rings, and now he's doing *Halt and Catch Fire*, which I believe is in its last season, but it's
yeah,
very
I think
popular.
Hold and Catch Fire is what is keeping his fandom sort of alive.
Yeah.
But it all started, I think, for a lot of people from Pushing Daisies. And he's such a cutie. Why not?
As is Anna Friel, also a cutie.
So you were a fan of Pushing Daisies?
Absolutely. I mean, I never got into like fan fiction or anything, but it's to this day. No, but it's like it has such a
Doesn't
warm
count.
place. It counts. It has such a warm place in my heart. I feel like it was too short-lived to, really enjoy the aspect of internet admiration, like fandom. But because it's 10 years ago, 10 years still make a difference. We didn't have Twitter back then, and it does make a difference. But it definitely holds a special place in my heart, and I would absolutely watch everything and anything that has to do with it in the future if it ever comes back in any sort of form.
Well, I hope so for you and for other people who loved it.
Have you not watched it, or you just didn't love
I
it?
did watch it for a while. I thought it was very sweet, but I kind of drifted out of it, and it was fine with me. Didn't really hold me.
Okay, that's fair. We don't judge on this podcast.
Look, the fandom is something that happens like falling in love. You can't judge it because it's love. If you fell into fandom, what can you do?
Yep, no, it's true.
It's out of my hands whether or not it did that thing to me.
Yeah, and sometimes you rediscover something down the line, even years later, and it's just
True.
the right timing for you to love it. And it makes it more special, so...
Yeah, very true.
All right, well, this concludes my roundup. Now I only have like Comic-Con stuff. So do you want to start or do you want me to start?
No, I think you have a ton of stuff, so I think you should just go.
All right.
And go.
Sounds good. Well, speaking of go, the first thing I want to talk about is Power Rangers. Go Power Rangers. Thank you for that. That worked out perfectly.
And we didn't even set it up. It just happened.
No, this is not scripted.
Nope.
Yes, so, I was trying to figure out how to present this, and I think one of my old favorites, and also in a way newly found, is the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. And there is a distinguish between the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, which was the original season, or two, the original show, and everything that came afterwards that still happens in the same canon, but it's just not the same group of people, and they keep being like, I don't know, Mega Force Power Rangers and like Ninja Power Rangers and all sorts of like, new generations and stuff. But it's definitely cultish. And now that it just had the new film, about a year ago, I feel like a new generation is exposed to it and can, research back, but also you have those people who've been there all along and are, just like experiencing it anew and get to be nostalgic about it. Saban Company with Boom Studios is at a comic book label. They knew all of this. So they have two different comic book titles currently. Mighty Morphin Power Rangers just finished the first year. And I actually purchased the first volume exactly a year ago in the first Comic-Con in New York that I've been to. And this year I got to buy the fourth, because it's been a year. So you have the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, which again finished the first year, and it's wonderful storytelling. And then you have the Go Power Rangers, which is more of like their high school tales and the life, I know it's cute because it's like, I haven't read it yet, but like just from hearing about it, it's relatively new. It didn't even have like a first volume yet, which means they only have like 3 issues out. But it's more like, how do you navigate homework with being a superhero, their social life as superheroes. So, it might be to a bit of a younger audience, but I'm sure it's adorable.
But can I ask you this? I was not a watcher. I was a bit older when that was on TV, even though I think it was for like years and years, right?
Yeah, it's still running. That's the next thing I was going to talk about, but
go
ahead, yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay. When it started being a big hit and a phenomenon, I was already past that sort of thing. But weren't they already teenagers? I mean, weren't they at school anyway?
They were. They got their powers while being students. And it's not something that they expected. So all of a sudden, they have to be both students and superheroes. So like, how do you do that?
And the original show didn't explore that?
Not so much, especially because it was targeted at a younger audience, and they talk about it a lot, how that younger audience is now adults, so they can, go into some themes that maybe they couldn't have gone back then. A bit of darker stuff as well.
Okay.
Like, in the film, Billy is on the spectrum, and one of the characters might come out as gay, like it's been insinuated, which is not something you had in the first season, which is, by the way, 25 years ago. So
yeah, and that's not a time that you did any of that. Now is the time to do these sort of things.
And that's what I mean by saying, in a way, it's like almost like a newfound fandom, because now they're taking this foundation, like they're using the same characters exactly, and they're drawing them as they were on that first season, the original season, but they're definitely placing them in like current, like modern settings. So you see them with iPads and like smartphones and all of that. And one of the things, one of the things that discussed about the new comic book, like the high school one, is that they're introducing someone who was best friends with all of them, because they're like a group, but he was not picked to be a ranger. So how is it like being him? How is it like being them when they know he's being left out? That's stuff that the show never touched on, because you had your weekly villain, and that was it, So it's definitely expanding on the world. And what's really amazing is, like I said, next year they're celebrating the 25th year anniversary of the show. And this is kind of what the panel was about. They were talking about what's in store. One of the things that they're planning is an artist book, for which they gathered a bunch of really cool artists, and they give like their own interpretation of the Rangers over the years. So not just that first season, but like 25 years of worth of seasons that artists got to adapt for like a one, drawing or something for that book. Which is really cool. And they also revealed the 25th anniversary logo, and they definitely said there will be some cool stuff on the TV show and cool stuff on the comic book. And what I wanted to kind of touch on just a little bit, that even before the 25th anniversary arrives, there is one upcoming storyline in the comic book that I find fascinating. And I'm gonna talk about it just a bit. It's a bit spoilery, but not really, but it also has been released already. So I'm giving you guys the warning to maybe like jump 5 minutes forward if you really care. But I think it's really important to mention this. So issue 20 is revealing, not unlike in the new film, by the way, that there was a group of Rangers before the current group. And that's a surprise, because we always met that group as like the original 5 or 6 if you include the Green Ranger. So all of a sudden, the comic book saying, oh, there was another group before that. And to make matters cooler, they're connecting that story to the moon landing in 1961. The creator said that he wanted to associate that group of Rangers with something historically big in the American history. Now, what I really wanted to mention was the best thing about this is the Red Ranger, i.e. like that's the leader of the team, is a woman. A role that has been always, portrayed by men. Like the Red Ranger has always been the leader, it's always been a guy. And now they're saying that even before the original group that we thought was the original, you have a female leader. So that's awesome. Like a female superhero was the original Red Ranger. And, the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, they were always good about diversity casting, even back in the day. And Walter Jones, who played the original Black Ranger, and he's a black man himself, he mentioned, and he was right, that Zack was the first black superhero on TV screen. And the comic book series builds on that diversity that was always in this fandom, and take a look back in a flashback and introduces us to a diverse group in the past.
That sounds really cool. And now, I think we spoke about this before. If you're gonna take a franchise, make it anew, and not address any of the issues that the society today is faced with, then why are you even doing this? And you're just gonna alienate people. So it's good that they address it. The fact that a woman is a leader is amazing. The idea of the Black Ranger, someone who's maybe gay, which makes complete sense.
I took a picture of the panel that they showed with the Red Ranger, the woman Red Ranger, so I'll put it on our YouTube. I got super excited.
Bet.
That's what I mean. I mean, it's a fandom, it's like a canon that I already liked, and all of a sudden they're like bringing it to my time and doing it in like, a way that speaks to me more. So I'm like, oh my god, thank you for taking something I always loved so much and like making it
even better.
Amazing. So yeah, that was one of the panels I've been to, 25 years anniversary for the Rangers. I even got to see 3 of the original ones and take a picture with a couple. So I was like, yes.
Cool.
Awesome.
What else? Who else have you taken a picture with?
Well, I'm keeping it for later, but okay. I'm just going through like a chronological order of like how the con went.
Sure.
But actually, one of the first panels I've been to was about geek journalism, like how what's the nowadays status of like geek journalism. I don't wanna say anything about that lecture, but one thing that really stood out to me and I thought was so cool. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, who's like a former NBA player,
of course,
is a huge fan of Sherlock Holmes. I had no idea. And one of the guys, the moderator of that geek journalism lecture panel, talk about how he wrote graphic novels about Mycroft.
What do you mean graphic novels? Not fan fiction, but actual graphic novels?
Yes, like an official work, that he wasn't the artist, but he was like one of, the script writers for it.
Cool.
And It's amazing. The moderator was talking about it, how like he wrote this piece that he loved so much about Kareem Abdul-Jabbar writing stuff for the Sherlock canon, and things today are moving so quickly that within like an hour after he wrote it, nobody even knew that he wrote this article. So I was like, I'm gonna dig up your article and let everybody on my podcast hear about it and read about it, because it's so awesome. Like, Kareem was saying how he would use Sherlock's techniques to beat his rivals on the court. Like, he would send people to find information about other players, and he would like psych them during the game with stuff that he knew about them. That's insane. I just love that so much.
That is very cool. Always nice to meet another fanboy.
Oh my god, isn't that cool? Like, it's just so unexpected. And it also shows you about how, like, first impressions, like, you would never think an NBA player, of all things, would be...
Why not? Look,
but that's what I mean. That's what I mean.
If he was, like, a big fan of, I don't know, Steven Universe or something like that, I would be more delighted, you know. But the fandom of Sherlock is, first of all, is it the books or the TV show? Because that's a different.
He's like everything. He loves it all.
So it's one of the oldest fandoms in the world, the books. One of the earliest cases of people writing fan fiction. You know, the rights weren't up for debate, so people just wrote more books and published them. So that's a form of fan fiction. That's a very, very established fandom. So that's not, you know, such a surprise that the person would be. And besides, you don't know anything about him. Maybe he's like the geekiest geek.
That's what I mean, though. Don't get me wrong. Like, loving Sherlock is a very understandable thing. And I own all of, like, Arthur Conan Doyle's creations myself because I love it. I'm just saying, it teaches you something about, like, making assumptions, you know, about people.
It makes an ass out of you and me.
Exactly. And I'm always happy to learn that lesson, because I'm always happy when someone surprises me that way, and I'm like, you know what, I should just never assume. You never know. And this is another thing, because like when friends say like, oh, I wouldn't come to Comic-Con because I'm not a geek, I'm not a nerd, whatever, they wouldn't necessarily say that in a negative way. They just don't realize how geekness is mainstream today, or how, like, oh, Sherlock is a fandom? Oh, I can love Sherlock and that makes me also a geek? Yes, it does, and that's a good thing, and that's exactly the point, that there's everything today almost can relate to fandom and like geekness. Things that you don't even realize. It's like my good friend, she's like, I don't really like sci-fi, but I do love Orphan Black, and I'm like, it's sci-fi. You know what I mean? But that's the thing. People think it's like they will like only one example within a genre, and I'm like, you like it because of like the human condition, and the human condition can be found in so many sci-fi creations, because honestly, that's what sci-fi does best.
True.
So
That's what sci-fi means.
Exactly.
Well, I'm here with Yuval and Hadass. Are you sisters?
Yeah.
They're sisters, and they are dressed amazingly as Asterix and Obelix from the books Asterix. And I was delighted because that's a fandom you don't see every day. So could you tell me in a few words, is this a fandom that is still alive for you guys?
Mainly in our family. Asterix is a major part of our day-to-day speech, and all of us read all of the books that have been translated to Hebrew. Hadass and her brother Peleg have been reading them since they were even younger than 4 years old. The books have been passed from our father, who got them from his father, who read them probably as an adult. And for us, it's still a living fandom, yes.
Yeah, absolutely. It sounds like a family thing for you guys. So Hadass, you kind of grew up with this.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's amazing. And do people recognize you when you walk down the con?
Yes, this is probably the most recognizable cosplay we've had ever. People won't stop saying how much they love Asterix and ask for pictures and say that we're amazing, and we love it.
I know, I did. I really stopped in my tracks. You guys are so delightful in your outfits. And what were some of the other things you dressed up as before?
We've tried a few things. We've done a few things from the Soul Eater anime with a brother, a few things from Tim Burton movies, Gravity Falls.
Oh, wonderful. Good stuff. But this is the most successful, you would say.
Yes, definitely.
Well, you guys look awesome. Thank you for talking to us.
Hi there, what is your name?
Hi, I'm Vera.
Tell us what your cosplaying is.
I'm doing Ford Pines from Gravity Falls.
And she looks pretty awesome.
Thank you.
Is this your first Comic-Con?
This is my first Comic-Con. I've done, other conventions. But yeah, this is my first NYCC. Cool. It's
What do you
huge.
think?
It's
Yeah.
enormous. It is by far the biggest con I've ever been to. It's like totally overwhelming. Definitely.
What time did you get here today?
I got here at 11. Yeah.
Which is okay.
Yeah.
It's not crazy. What, did you manage to do anything or just pretty much the show
I've really
floor?
just been walking around like, whoa.
Observing.
Lots of things and stuff and people.
Do you have anything specific planned?
Well, there's a couple of, I'm like really into TV stuff, so there's a couple of cool TV panels. There's really like little but cool show called Stan versus Evil. We're doing a panel later.
I was actually gonna go. The only thing is I won't be back here in time for the Power Rangers panel because it's not here.
Yeah.
But I love Jen Varney, so.
Yeah, I love John C. McGinley. I'm like a huge fan of his. And yeah, Jan Varney's also awesome. And yeah, there's some other TV stuff happening tomorrow that I'm gonna go check out. If I can catch a glimpse of like a Star Wars person, that would be cool, but I'm not, hopeful about it.
Is there any fandom that you're a part of that you feel like people are not as familiar with?
Watch Gravity Falls, everyone. It's awesome.
Well, yeah, that's that's the
Number
default.
one, number
Yes.
one.
Anything else?
Gosh, that's a good question. Things that people aren't familiar with. Well, I mean, this is like an old fandom at this point, but I'm a huge fan of the Discworld series, and it's kind of been, I think, a little bit forgotten. So read Discworld.
Well, I'd be
Also-
happy to hear that we've been talking a lot about Terry Pratchett.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm really happy to hear
Yeah,
that.
because
That's wonderful.
of Good Omens.
Yes.
And, yeah.
Very cautiously optimistic about Good Omens.
Pretty much describes how we feel about it.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, I'm here with Adam, who's dressed up like Jane from Firefly. He's got the hat and everything, and that's how you know it's Jane. As a big Firefly girl myself, it's been a while since Firefly was a thing. How does it feel for you? Are you still in it?
I still watch it all the time. Every once in a while, I'll go back to an episode. I try to introduce new people to Firefly as much as I can.
Well, there are so many episodes to choose from. Like, there are about 13, 15 episodes.
We're still waiting for season number 2.
Any minute now. So you have people you watch this with, or do you keep finding new people to make them watch it?
Mostly I try to find new people. My brother and I watch it together every once in a while.
Is it still something that is alive in your heart, and it's hard to, to realize that it's been like more than a decade and people are kind of moving on?
The characters are done so well that they're still alive. They don't die so quickly. So even though it's only 14 episodes in a movie, it's enough to fall in love with the characters within 2 or 3 episodes.
Do you or have you ever read fan fiction for Firefly? Are you a fan fiction person?
Not really.
So what's kind of a community thing that you can do, except watching it, of course, with friends? Were you ever a part of the community?
There's a subreddit on Reddit that you share. There are lots of memes and people post funny pictures on there. I'm not really part of it, but I do look at it every once in a while.
So it's kind of alive there, and you pop in, you check on it from time to time.
Exactly.
Okay. So do you consider yourself a fanboy? Any other fandoms that you're into?
I grew up on Star Trek. It's always in my heart. I'm excited about the new series. We'll see how it goes. It's very fresh, but it has a lot of potential, so I'm excited.
That is exciting to have your fandom back like that. Okay, well, thank you so much.
Did you buy this hat here a couple of years ago?
Yes, I did.
Oh my god, I think it's one of mine.
You made this hat?
It's
yeah,
beautiful.
I crocheted it.
Oh,
I
that's
love it.
amazing.
I wear it here every year, and every once in a while. A little bit.
Oh, that's an amazing moment in fandom. My friend Iris came along and she made this hat. So the Firefly thing is still really happening. It's alive.
It's alive.
Well, thanks, guys.
So, day 2, I went to super interesting, super super important panel about representation of mental health in pop culture.
Oh, very
Yeah.
important.
And I told my mom about it. She's a social worker, and I told her, listen, people don't realize who comes to Comic-Con, but that panel was made out of 3 therapists and a lawyer. Because everybody is a fan. You don't really put it in a box. So so one of the things that I really want to touch upon was one of the panelists. He told a story of one of his patients. Of course, he didn't mention the name, but he was like, she is a teenager who for a while didn't come to see him, and he was worried. He didn't know where she was, and he asked another therapist if he had seen her. And anyways, they both haven't seen her in a while. They got worried, and eventually when they found her, she was starting to develop schizophrenia. And when they found her, they asked her why she skipped appointments, and she said that when she started realizing what's happening with her, and when she started realizing that she was becoming delusional, she became so scared of becoming a killer that she didn't want to be around people. And he asked her, why would you even think that you would become a killer? Like, the thought didn't even occur to me. And she said, that's because that's what you see on television.
Right.
And that's just,
Okay.
it was
That's so disturbing.
it was such a strong moment, because this young lady who comes for help, and she was like in real distress about the fear of hurting other people because of what she sees on TV. And there are a lot of problems of how mental illness is portrayed on TV. People sometimes, that's another thing they mentioned I found interesting. Sometimes people think mental illness is like a superpower. Someone will say, oh, I wish I would be autistic because that also means being a genius. But in truth, they have no idea what these people have to face every day. That's such a strong point. They did bring up Jessica Jones as a good example for mental illness representation, and we're talking specifically PTSD. But the panelists pointed out that she's another example of someone suffering because of something that was done to her, which is the same thing from Elektra on Daredevil. And so they're pointing out that so many times mental illness representation is either as the villain or character that has something done to them, rather than just, portraying people who live with mental illness.
I have to mention, there are a few cases that do this well, but I can only think of one right now because it's one of my hugest fandoms, and I recommend it with all my heart. It's a British show, a very small one. It's from about 3 years ago. It's called My Mad Fat Diary, and the protagonist of this amazing show is a 16-year-old girl named Ray, who is very fat, has mental health issues, problem with food. She starts the show, like, this is not really a spoiler because it happens like literally in the very beginning of the show. Like, the first thing you know about her is that she's hospitalized for trying to kill herself. And her world is very much a very scary world, but the show portrays her in such a good way, healthy way. Her world is not only the fears and the anxiety and the food issues, it's also a lot of funny interactions, a lot of friends. She's a very funny person. She's a sexual person. She has a lot of interests. She loves music, She's a very well-rounded individual. It's an amazing character. The actress, Sharon Rooney, is just brilliant. And this is a very important show for people suffering from mental health. The fandom is mostly built from people, mostly girls, who are very, very... who came about it through that, who could really identify. I didn't suffer from mental health in my life, thank God, but I was a fat 16-year-old, and I was fat most of my life, and I had a lot of issues around that from, what society shows us of ourselves. So I came to this show from identifying with that part of her. But the idea is that it's still an amazing character. She's so much of so many things, not just that. And the show is about learning to deal with it, get help, do something that is healthy instead of something that's not healthy, etc. So I had to just throw that out there. Go watch this show. There's 3 short seasons, but don't watch the 3rd season because it's crap. It's terrible, and it's very, very bad for mental health people. People were getting triggered left and right. It's a different person wrote it, and it's just bad. So don't go there. But watch the first 2.
I'm actually really glad you brought this one up because I was gonna surprise you in relations to a different panel later on, so we will go back to that. I know.
Shut up. I'm so excited now. Oh my God.
I mean, I can't shut up because we're doing a podcast, but
No,
yes. Let me ask you, it might sound a stupid question, is it a comedy or is it a drama, or maybe it's a dramedy?
It's both.
Okay,
It's a very confusing show for people because when it starts, it's very, very dark. People get, I have to say myself, when I first saw the first scene, I was like, I can't handle this. This brings up too many of my worst moments in life. But if you just get over that part where this is about a person suffering from anxiety, fears, and all those things, like I said, it's hilarious. It's a very funny show. It's a very sexual show. Amazing characters, wonderful actors. It has everything in it, except for the 3rd one.
Except for the 3rd
Do
one.
not watch the 3rd
I'm actually really glad you brought up like the viewing experience and the triggering, because I am getting to that in a second. But I do want to say, just to conclude the previous subject, that A, it seems like everybody agreed that the Big Bang Theory isn't very good representation. And B, that's kind of the point. Like you said, you could only come up with the one show in which you just follow a person who lives with it. And, the panelists mentioned, which we know, that a person needs to create the representation that a person wants to see in the world, like with every minority, to be honest.
Absolutely.
And the same panelist, indeed, being true to his word, he has a free webcomic starring a bipolar superhero called Aura. So it's AURA comics.tumblr.com if you guys want to take a look. I subscribed. I haven't had a chance to go through it yet, but I'm definitely, and the fact that he lets people see it for free, that's definitely something worth mentioning. Another thing that was really interesting that came up in the panel was sometimes the way a story is being reported or portrayed definitely has direct impact on statistics of suicide attempts, of people asking for help because suddenly they feel desperate, just like you said, triggering. So while representation is important, it does matter what it looks like, or in other words, some publicity is bad. And then they were talking about a show that I've definitely, heard mixed emotions about, which is 13 Reasons Why.
Yes.
Yeah, they brought it up as an example for, good intentions gone bad. And this, in the room alone, there were mixed emotions about it. One girl who comes from a family with, background of mental health, to almost everyone there, said that the show was really important to her. And someone else said that he's been triggered. That also shows you that the experiences are so individual. But what they could say, the panelists, was that they definitely saw a spike in numbers of people seeking help after watching it. It definitely triggered people. And they mentioned that when campuses, for example, they report about suicide attempts on the front cover, there was a spike in suicide attempts versus when that coverage was inside the paper rather than on the coverage.
Really?
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah, and another thing they said about 13 Reasons Why, that show consulted mental illness professionals, which again makes it an example of how good intentions can have unforeseeable negative consequences. Because the show had mental health people on set because they knew well enough, they realized just how much the actors might be impacted just shooting this content, yet by doing the show itself, they haven't necessarily served the public well. So obviously it's still a struggle.
Yeah, it's a debate.
Yeah. That concludes that panel. If you still want to add anything about that subject.
I just want to say really quickly that while I do understand how the best of intentions can go bad, and that I have my own feelings regarding 13 Reasons, but you should commend them for trying to do it right. this is the thing about these topics. People are going to get triggered and other people are going to get inspired and feel that it helped them. You can't win with everyone. You have to be very responsible. Try to be responsible. It sounds to me like they tried. And then just tread very lightly. And the fact that it's out there, it's on our TV screens, that people are talking about it, is better. It's not ideal. It's not great. It's sometimes horrible for people, but it's better than the silence. That's the point. Sometimes doing something and just having a lot of consequences fall on top of you and having to deal with all the horrible things that happen is still better than not doing anything, not speaking out, not talking about it. Not talking about things is how society has been handling every horrible thing that we're doing for all these thousands and thousands of years. So we're finally at a point where we want to talk about things, and I support it. I think there's no way that you can not ever trigger anyone.
Yeah.
But you can try to do it right. About let me go back to the third season of My Mad Fat Diary for a second. The reason that I hate it, and every person who considers himself a fan hated it so much, it's because a different person was a showrunner, a different person wrote it. He was not as sensitive to the subject matter as the creator. I don't even know if he really did any research into mental health and what is a positive way to deal with it and what is not. I think he was trying to just make it as dramatic as he can. It's a very, it's British, so it's a very short season. You can hardly call it even a season. It's 3 episodes. And he tried to put everything in those 3 episodes. So he did a fucking bad job, not just for that, but for every other plot and every other character. Like the most beautiful of characters just were let down on those miserable 3 episodes. But the fact is, there were a lot of people who got triggered, and someone said I started cutting myself after watching it, and it was just everything that the show taught me and made me feel good about myself. I now saw they showed me the opposite, and I feel bad about myself. So that's a very thin line to walk, but you can at least try.
Yeah.
He obviously did not try. He just took it as a writing job. That's what it feels like. And you can do that when it comes to that. If you want to write something like that, write something like, I don't know what, Beverly Hills 90210. Something fluffy. Just don't go there.
We see it a lot when, showrunners change, and sometimes it marks the decline of a show. But that was the debate in the room. Like, you clearly think people should try, and then the question is, who is responsible if something like this happens? The viewer for choosing to consume it, the creator who could not necessarily foresee, or, in 13 Reasons Why's case, they even tried, to make it the best they could. The parents, it's a very gray area. There's, I agree with you, the more the better, but the quality, that's what they were trying to say. It seems like the panelists at least agreed that the very important point is how you do things. And let me tell you, the creator of 13 Reasons Why is Brian Yorkey, who also did Next to Normal, which is a musical and another beautiful piece about mental health.
Yeah.
So, he has this background of clearly,
He can handle
the subject. Or you would think, he definitely has the background and clearly the fascination and the sensitivity or the will to be sensitive about that subject. So I remain undecided on the whole thing. I haven't seen the show because of what everybody told me about it. But yeah, you just gotta appreciate that different people will react differently to things and just always strive to do better. Alright, let me move on to something a bit lighter and much shorter too. I just want to mention I went to a panel called Badass Women of Sci-Fi, as in Sci-Fi the channel. They're the ones who presented that panel. That panel was so great. It was a cool panel with a cool video intro. It had a few actresses and showrunners and Gail Simone, which we talked about earlier. One of the showrunners was the showrunner of Wynonna, so Wynonna Earp, of course. So for me, it was a joy. It's the first time I got to see her speak live. Like many of the people in attendance have, been going to cons just to see her. So for me, it was my first opportunity. I was really excited. Lots of awesomeness in that room. The one thing that I really wanted to mention about this was the actress Frankie Adams, who's on the show The Expanse. She's a Polynesian actress, and she mentioned during the panel how she can't think of any other Polynesian actresses beside her. The only people she could come up with were The Rock and Moana.
And she found them at the same place, in the same area.
Of course. And I'm like, that alone makes me want to watch The Expanse, because I'm like, this woman is a badass and she's awesome. And, she was right to say that, every minority, not everybody's the same. So obviously it's not enough that she's the only Polynesian actress out there, because she doesn't represent all of, Polynesian people. It was a great panel. If this panel makes its way to YouTube, I hope, Comic-Con sometimes uploads panels. It's definitely worth a watch. I had to leave early because I had to go and get some free Buffy merchandise, so I think that's very understandable.
Worth it. What'd you get?
So,
What'd you get me? Is the real question here.
Well, nothing, because could only pick 4 items. And there were, I know it's super hard. Listen. They were celebrating the 20th anniversary by not exactly at the Javits Center, which is where the con is, but I told you there are a few other locations, but they rented this suite in a hotel, and you just walked in different time slots, and the room is full of Buffy merchandise, and you can only pick 4. It was super hard.
Oh my god!
I know, but I miraculously managed to get in there, because that morning was the first time I heard about it, while people, I guess, have been lined up for weeks online to do that. And I guess someone just canceled one last spot in the last spot of the day while the waitlist was still full. So I guess someone just canceled and they haven't let anyone on the waitlist know yet. And I just swooped in miraculously. And I was like, oh my
Amazing.
God. I know. And see, that's what happens in a con. The same way we talked earlier about how sometimes there are frustrations and things you definitely want to do, you don't get to do, and it's not up to you. The same way, there's just going to be surprises along the way, and you should be ready to roll with it,
Yes.
And I think Emily Andros, the creator of Winona, will forgive me, because she always quotes Buffy as one of her biggest inspirations. So I think she'll forgive me for leaving 10 minutes before the end of the panel, so I could, go get free Buffy stuff.
Okay.
Right.
What else?
Moving on. So, day 3 of New York City Comic Con gave me the chance to finally talk to Janet Varney. I know. Podcast favorite Janet Varney. Who I just can't decide if I want to marry or be BFFs with. It's just that's the Janet Varney problem. I did her signing first, and then we had the Cora panel. Which was an awesome discussion between her and Irene Coe, who is actually the illustrator who does Turf Wars, which is the continuation of Cora, the Cora comic books. And it's a trilogy. Oh, should I say trilogy? It's just so weird because it comes from 3.
Well, it's thrilling, so it's a trilogy.
I was gonna say it's thrilling, so it should really be a trilogy. Yes. So part 2 of that trilogy comes out at the end of January, and I cannot wait. And then I also got to go to the Tick panel, and we talked about the Tick as one of my recommendations in the past.
Yes.
Part 2 of season 1 comes out in February. So they showed us, an exclusive kind of clip of what's coming. It was a super fun panel. I really loved getting to see Yara Martinez, with my own eyeballs for the first time ever. She's, like we mentioned, on Jane the Virgin as well. And I really wanted to ask David Fury if he still has issues with mustard. But, it didn't work out that way.
Didn't come up.
Somehow it didn't come up, but yeah. So
But you do know that they got the mustard out.
I know, but I was more
He
thinking...
has no problems with the mustard. It's out.
I know. I was thinking more did he encounter new problems with mustard afterwards? Because if you have the tendency to spill stuff on yourself, it's very likely that he still had issues with mustard. So anyways, I didn't ask him, but that was just... a quickie about our love Janet and my other love Yara, since we can do the rolling R, might as well. So my very last panel that I want to talk about.
Wait,
Yes, what?
Wait.
I'm waiting.
We just breezed past Janet Varney and I didn't get to say anything. What?
To be very honest with you, I find it hard to talk about because like I become so emotional. I will tell you what.
Okay.
I'll tell you what. One of the cutest things was that I asked her and I approached her. I was like, "Hey, can I be really rude and Israeli and ask you for a selfie?" And of course, I was charming and joking because like self-awareness is what gets stuff done. And she was totally into it, but she was looking at like the guy to her side. He was like, "I'm so sorry, no time for photos," which by the way annoyed me because later on I saw that someone did take a picture with her in that, signing. But since we couldn't do a selfie, she drew both of us by her signature.
Yeah, that's amazing.
I'm gonna upload this picture.
Yeah.
It was a masterpiece. I mean, considering she drew me and I asked her if that was her, maybe, she's a woman of many talents, but maybe illustration is not one of them. But I have to say, by the time she was done drawing me, I definitely could see the dreadlocks. So we were fine. And also she pronounced my name perfectly, and I told her I was very impressed with her. And she's like, well, ... Basically just like, I'm awesome. That's what I mean. It was in my head. It was implied that she was awesome.
It was magical.
She
I
was.
have to say, I'm also a lover of Janet Varney. Can I say that? I do love her. I know her.
Podcast favorite,
Yeah.
Janet Varney.
Absolute favorite. I know her from various podcasts. Chief amongst them is the Thrilling Adventure Hour. That is one of my biggest, if not my biggest fandom to date. And I get excited and emotional just thinking about the fact that you got to talk to her. And I will be talking about that fandom at length in a upcoming show because I can talk about it for weeks. So I have to. I have to do it. So
what you're saying
she's
is
one of my favorites.
What you're saying is we'll get to talk about Janet even more soon. Yes.
Even more soon. But I don't know. There's so much to talk about there. So I don't know what percentage of that will be little Janet Varney. But we're giving it a heads up right now.
Yes, and I do want to say one last thing about Janet is, and I've known this for a while, she's so good to her fans. Last year, I could not get into the Korra panel. I came to line up an hour in advance and I couldn't get in, which is just goes to show you this is the lesson I learned for this year, and I was there way, way before that and sat in on the panel before. But last year, when she saw so many people were left outside and couldn't get in, she walked out, gave some people, some pages from the Korra coloring book, and she said that she's so sorry that we can't come in, but she came out personally to
What a
apologize.
sweetheart.
I know, and this year, they were doing a trivia during the panel, and she was the one who walked around the entire, hall to, give people their awards and a hug.
Oh my God.
So, I know. And of course, as you know, I eventually got to take that selfie during the panel.
You kept me posted. But I just wanted
I
just wanted to say, because we talk about our fandoms as if anybody and everybody know what we know. But we should just say that who is Janet Varney to you? She is the voice of Korra.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I'm not saying that you can't be my friend if you don't know that, but there's... we will have some problems.
It's
you
not
know?
friends, it's people who listen to this podcast, and sometimes they learn about fandoms they never heard about before. So tell them, what does little Janet Varney do?
Dear Janet Varney is, like you mentioned, the voice of Korra from Legend of Korra, which is the continuation piece for Avatar: The Last Airbender, not to be mixed with,
The movie. The horrible movie.
I liked it. Of course, now when we talked about the whole whitewashing thing and, the white savior, we look at everything differently. And that's okay too. And that's actually my next point, but we'll get to that. But yeah, with Avatar: The Last Bender, one of the most diverse shows. Kids will enjoy it because the characters initially have superpowers, basically, and adults will enjoy it because there's so many themes, dictatorship and war and things,
Fun.
It's just a very layered piece, and what I really love about it is the guys who have those so-called superpowers, they can basically bend the elements of nature. So there's also a nature aspect to it. So the point is like every bender can only bend one element. The avatar is the one who can bend all, and that's what makes him the avatar, and he's the one who needs to keep the balance.
And who is Korra?
And Korra, oh, but I will say just before that one sentence, not everyone in that world is a bender, and that's another interesting point, because, you know, people sometimes feel like it almost create classes, you know, between benders and quote-unquote regular humans. Aang is an avatar in that first story, Avatar The Last Airbender. He's an airbender. When an avatar dies, he reincarnates, and Korra is basically the reincarnation of Aang. So, or I should say Aang, whatever, American accent. Korra is from the water tribe. She's a waterbender, and her story happens, you know, I don't know, like 60 years after Aang or whatever. And it was great, because Avatar was so great, but then you get an Avatar who's a woman. And Janet Varney has a very sexy voice. Let's be very clear about that. And by the end of the show, again, spoilers, so just like jump 5 minutes ahead, but it's, you know, it's been 2 years.
No, but I still want to watch it. Don't say it.
But you know, I
don't
think
know
what I'm
anything.
referring to.
No spoilers.
I'm talking shipping-wise, no?
I know that one. I know about that.
You know, that's what I mean, though. So, okay, so let's be
we
vague
just,
about it. But
say vaguely that it was very satisfying towards the end, ship-wise.
yes, indeed. And it makes her a big favorite among certain communities. It's hard to stay vague, but whatever, you know. I mean, today the character is kind of canonly bisexual, and I think, you know, that's something that we can say, and it's important to say. It is super important to say. So Janet also had that aspect of being very supportive of, you know, that community. She's definitely championing what needs to be championed, and that all is to say that she's awesome, and that is what she means to me.
Jimmy.
Hey Jimmy, nice to meet you.
Here.
What are you cosplaying as today?
I am Boba Fett, and I just killed Chewbacca, so I'm wearing his hide.
Not bad. Also, I don't know if you watch Winona Earp at all. Winona Earp.
Yes.
But your beard reminds me of Bobo, so it's almost like you're cosplaying as Bobo Fett.
I don't watch that show. I have heard of it, but I do my beard. This is what I do all the time.
That's awesome. Yeah. I think that's great. Is this your first Comic-Con?
No, this is my fourth one.
In New York or in general?
All New York, yeah.
So you haven't done San Diego, but have you done any other smaller cons at all?
Yeah, little local ones, but nothing on the level of this, you know, just in and out.
Yeah. Are you here for any specific event, or is there something specific you're looking forward to?
No, I just come, you know, I like seeing the vendors, I like to see what's for sale. I love seeing everyone dress up. I like to dress up. It's just, you know, this is my people. And I feel at home, you know, and it's a great feeling. You know, you can't get it anywhere else.
Are you going to any panels at all?
No, I don't think so.
That's interesting, because I was talking to someone earlier about how, like, people have completely different experiences at Comic-Con because people just have completely different priorities.
Right.
And I was like, maybe next year I won't do the show floor at all and just focus on panels, you know?
It gets really confusing. I'm not great on the computers and all that stuff. And I don't map anything out. I just go, walk the floor, and have fun. There are things I would love to have seen, but I don't like waiting on lines. You know, and the lines, you know, out for these things are really too long. So
yeah, if it's the main stage, I don't even look at it. I'm like,
don't bother.
Yeah. So I wonder, you're a part of any smaller, more obscure fandom that maybe not many people know about, and you're always like kind of pimp or whatever?
I don't think so. I think we all have our own little subcultures, and you know, I try to enjoy life and the best I could and have fun. And like, I know people look at me and are like, oh my God, how can you do this? Like, I have all these tattoos and dyeing a beard all the time. And you know, listen, you don't get it, you don't get it. I'm having fun, and that's what it's about.
Awesome, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Hello there.
Hi.
What is your name?
My name is Christine.
Hello, Christine.
Hi.
We're standing here waiting for the baddest women of sci-fi panel to start in like an hour and a half, but that's just how it goes.
We're early because we're super fans.
Yes, and also because we are good planners.
Yeah.
So, is this your first time in Comic-Con New York?
It is not. I've been a few times, maybe 4.
And have you done any other cons outside of New York at all, or like never?
I've been to Baltimore Comic Con and I have been to Awesome Con, both just once.
Was it awesome? Awesome con?
It was pretty awesome. I got to meet some people who were in Buffy.
Oh, which ones?
Of course, Amber Benson.
Of course.
She was the most memorable and the top of my list.
Yes.
It was very nice to meet her because I got to tell her, like, Willow and Tara were the very first queer people that I saw on television, and I had come out before they were, on the show being together. So that was huge for me.
Yeah, they were my first queer ship, and also Amber was the person because of which I opened my Twitter account.
Really?
Yes.
That's awesome.
Is there something you're specifically looking forward to in this con? Like one event that is like the event?
The event actually happened yesterday. It was for the Carmilla movie. So I got to meet Natasha and Elise, and I'm so excited to see the movie. They showed the trailer, which was really nice. And that's really like the most important thing, and it's already completed, so I feel like I can just relax and do whatever I want for the next 3 days.
Which is what? What else is coming up?
Well, Badass Women of Sci-Fi.
Of course.
There's an Erper meetup afterwards, which I'm excited about. And I don't know what I'm doing tomorrow or the next day. I haven't really looked at the schedule.
That's actually really good. I wish I had that problem at the moment. Do you feel like you're a part of any sort of like smaller fandom or like more obscure fandom that not many people know about but you would like to pimp out?
I don't know if they're small, because, queer people seem to know about all of them, but, Winona Earp, Carmilla, I don't know that straight people have really caught on to these things.
So because I'm one of the co-hosts of the podcast, every episode since we started, Winona was mentioned. So I'm sure when my co-host hears this, she'll be like, that defeats the purpose. But I'm with you. Watch Winona Earp for sure.
I want everyone to watch it.
Awesome.
Everyone should. And the bold type.
And the bold
Everyone
type.
should watch the bold type.
Which I also recommend on the podcast. Yep. Awesome. Well, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Enjoy the con.
You too.
My last panel of the con is called Our Problematic Faves. And Shiri, you would have loved this panel, okay? Oh my god, it's so hard to talk about this panel. Basically, this is what it talked about. All these creations that are super popular, and now looking back or just critically analyzing them, you realize how problematic they are while still being a favorite. So the panelists did a quick yet great scan of all sorts of content that is so popular, but there's always the thing people don't talk about it when it comes to that, that creation. They mentioned how hard it is when it comes to fandom to talk about something critically because people get so personally hurt.
Yeah.
And it's not the first time I heard it in the con, because in the geek journalism panel, they mentioned it as well. People take it personally. People, they treat you as a party pooper. But, things need to be able to be criticized. If you still love them after they're criticized, then maybe they're worth it, It's okay to like something, but when you present it to someone else, to say something like, I love this thing, but,
Yes.
have a more, have a more informed consuming experience of that something. So, sometimes you recommend something to a person and you need to prepare them. You gotta say, listen, this thing is great, but keep in mind that. Something that they mentioned was how many times creators ask the audiences to trust the journey, to wait till the end. By the end, it will be worth it. But these creators don't realize that sometimes the end makes it worse or not actually worth it. And the example they gave was actually Nick Spencer's Captain America, which I don't know if you heard about it, but a couple years ago,
No.
I think it was a couple years ago, they revealed, I haven't read it, but I know, they revealed that Captain America was part of Hydra.
Oh,
in
yes,
that
yes,
new-
of course. I remember that. Such bullshit, and it was so obvious that it's just gonna be blown over in a second.
Yeah, but they said the end was not worth it. They're saying many times there's use of tropes and people think that it will be okay by the end and then it's not, and they could
Take a minute to talk about it because I know it doesn't mean that everyone knows what we're talking about.
Oh, you mean specifically with Captain America?
Yeah, just give us a 2-sentence summary.
Yeah, I myself don't know much about it, but it was a big deal over social media because they exposed like a new Captain America title that Nick Spencer was responsible of, and what you see at the very beginning, like the establishing of it, is that Cap is part of Hydra. You see him on the cover saying "Hail Hydra," and of course, people. The thing is, if I'm understanding the story correctly, his past has been manipulated, so he will think that he was a part of Hydra. But the point is that for him, the experience was real, even if at the end, it's exposed that, so, and I think that was, again, like, I don't know much more about it, but...
Well, I can I can add that...
Go ahead.
The thing that really got people rattled, of course, there's the fact that you take your entire fandom, years of establishing a character and just turning it on its head, because it's Captain America, it symbolizes freedom and everyone's rights, and he's like this amazing American ideal, and then now he's a Nazi. Because the fact is, the creation of Captain America as a comic book, as a character, was a two Jewish men's reaction to the Nazi party, to everything that was going on. So it was two a Jewish man's reaction to being Jewish people in a world where there are Nazis. Okay? So it was their way to comment on World War II. So it's very crucial if you now say this icon is actually a Nazi. Because that's actually the opposite of the purpose for his creation. And that's unbelievably insulting to Jewish people and to people who love Captain America for everything he represents, and very insulting to the people who created him, I think.
Yeah.
And that's what a lot of people thought. And it was, in the beginning, the people didn't know where this is going. We kind of figured, look, I'm not a big fan, but I was really listening because I was interested at the time. And you kind of figured that it's going to be subverted. Like in a second, they're going to say, it really didn't happen. He was going undercover or whatever, But like you said, is it worth it? No. You did something very stupid just to be talked about.
Yeah, it's interesting that you're bringing up the creation of Captain America, because as of this morning, I finished the 639 pages that is The Amazing Adventures of Cavalier and Clay. Did you ever hear about that book?
No, never.
It's Michael Chabon. He won a Pulitzer for it, and he always writes with Jewish themes because he's Jewish and his wife is Jewish, and it happens in old New York around the time of World War I, and it's two Jewish cousins who make up a character, a superhero called the Escapist, and he's the first half of his life as a character he fights Nazis, and it's very clear that it mirrors Captain America, though it's a fictional superhero made up for this book that lives alongside Captain America and Superman. But all of these creations, you're right, like looking back, many of these creations were like by Jewish people, or it's like a very pointed,
commentary.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say the one thing that, when I spoke in this panel, which happened, was the only time that it happened, because they were trying to think up examples of a creation in which there's a trope, and then by the end, it's okay. And I brought up Orphan Black, because you've seen the whole show, right?
I did.
Right, so the end of season 3 or 4... there's a character's, again, it's very, very hard to not spoil it all, but, again, it's aired like 3 years ago. There's a character's death, and it's a queer character, and, everybody attacked them about, like, the barrier gaze trope, and of course, a season later, we know that his character is fine, and she's there to the very end, and she gets a happy ending, so... It's not that you never get an ending that was worth it. It's not that you should never trust the journey. It's just that a lot of creators use that excuse, and for the most part, it's not worth the journey,
Yes.
I'm standing here with Genevieve.
Hello.
Hello. Tell us what you're dressed as.
I am dressed as Captain Carter. I am more of a elegant, glamorous version, an evening gown with rhinestones and a rhinestone full-size shield.
She looks amazing.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Are you an Ailey Atwell fan?
I am. She's everything that I've seen her in, I've absolutely loved. So, and I've met her in person, and she's just a peach.
She seems insane in the best way possible.
She is, and she's got this like laugh that will just infect you, and then you have to start laughing.
Okay, so you actually have a business. So
yes.
Tell me a bit about that.
There's actually quite a few of us that work together with Cause and Effect, COS and Effect, because we like awesomely terrible puns.
We love those.
We are all cosplayers. We primarily cosplay, actually, all in the Marvel Universe, and mostly Captain America. We have those of us who are captains. We have Carters, Agent Carters. We have even a Red Skull.
And some of you are Captain Carters.
Yeah, and Captain Carters in this case. And USO girls. So we do a lot of different things.
So do you sell cosplayer items?
A lot of us do charity benefits. So it looks like it might take that position, but we all build props. We all are costumers. One of us actually is a professional wig maker. She makes wigs she works on in film and theater, and one of us happens to work with the USO. So I mean, like, we are
nice.
Yeah, Agent Carter and Steve Rogers have nothing on this guy. So yeah.
Where are you guys based?
We're based out of New York.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, so we're here. Actually, we're just a couple of blocks down from the Javits Center.
This is your home territory. That's
Yeah.
amazing. So I'm gonna go ahead and guess this is not your first Comic-Con.
No, this is not my first Comic-Con, and this is actually, I've been kind of making the rounds. I was just at Geek Girl Con in Seattle last weekend, so yeah.
Was there something you're looking forward to specifically in this con? Like an event that was really...
This con, it was mainly just getting a chance to see friends that I haven't seen in a long time. And surprisingly, there were friends that I haven't seen in a long time that live in Seattle that just happened to be here and had no idea that I was here. I was just excited to see the things that people were bringing with what we're going through, especially in this country. It just seemed like this was a big chance to try and make a difference in somebody's life. And it mostly for the kids. That's why I do this, is for the kids. Like even with my rhinestone shield, one of my biggest things is I made it's light enough for kids to get a chance to hold, and they get to be the ones to be, Captain America or Captain Carter for that moment. And so we needed a little bit of a bright spot, and these last few months of cons have been that bright spot, getting to see people enjoying the fandoms that they love.
So with that in mind, do you guys have anything specific planned for tomorrow, which is Family Day?
I've been asked, especially since one of the pictures of me has gone viral, I've been asked to come back as Captain Carter again, just for the fact that a lot of kids are wanting pictures, and they want to be able to wear their Avengers costumes to have a chance to take a picture with the shield. So after that, it looks like we're going to. There will be quite a few of us up at the booth that we happen to be with, which is Hero Hair, and so it was one of the wig companies that we work with, and the nice things that we do, they have a booth set up for people to take pictures and not only look at their products but take pictures, and so we wanted to kind of coordinate, and so there will be a lot of captains, and there will be Star Wars fandom, they will represent Justice League, Avengers, everyone will be set up there, so we'll be able to get a lot of the families to come through and get photos. We want to make it, the kids have this really great experience.
Well, that sounds amazing. Thank you so much for talking to me.
Thank you so much. Thank you for meeting me like you did.
In the bathroom, by the way.
In the bathroom. I know. We took a bathroom selfie.
Enjoy the rest of your con.
Thank you so much, you too.
So another super interesting thing that they brought up and I wasn't aware of, I mean, the specifics of it, they talked about shipping and how the majority of audiences seems to only ship white people. What they brought up is
That's not true.
Yeah, listen. Well, but listen to something really interesting. They said many people ship Reylo, like Star Wars, so that's Rey, and what's his face? Adam Driver's character, I forgot his character, Kylo Ren. So is the bad guy.
This is like
Also,
the
I
last fandom you can ask me questions about. Zero interest in Star Wars.
It's okay, but I'll tell you, he's the bad guy. If we might find out in the next film that he's also happens to be her cousin. People assume that he's her cousin. So like the panelists said, people would prefer to see Rey with Kylo Ren, who is a psycho and possibly her cousin, than with Finn, a black character.
But that's not
Who's
true.
been clearly, like-
That is not true. They have a very big fan base, Rey and Finn.
I'm not disagreeing with you because I don't know enough about the statistics of shipping. I think the point that we were trying to make was there's still substantial audience that would prefer to see that character with the white dude who's bad and might be her family than to see her with a black guy.
I
you know?
have to say, I find that very highly suspect. I don't agree with that theory, knowing what I know about shipping and fanfiction. I think it's more about there is the thing that people are drawn to in ships is more like I can see why they would want her to be with Kylo Ren because it's a redemption story. If it's a bad guy, if it's a psycho, we want to make him better. That's why people wanted Spike to be with Buffy or whatever, you know? It's his redemption story. Yeah. She is the one who will make him, actually that happened on the show in canon. She's the one who can make him be more interested in redemption than in, being a psycho. So that's the trope.
Right after he's done assaulting her, but...
Of course. No, we're not even going there. What I'm saying is the fans, even before that, I was one of them, right?
Yeah.
I can understand why we are attracted to that trope in shipping. I think that's where that goes. I know for a fact there is a ton of shipping for Finn and Rey. I know because my Mad Fat Diary ship they are called Finn and Rey, and I got really, really angry when people stopped talking about our Finn and Rey and started talking about their Finn and Rey, and they took our ship. That's why I know.
And they probably also took your hashtag. That was a mess.
Well, it's spelled differently, so Rey, so it's spelled differently. That's the only thing that makes it kind of okay. But what I mean is, I've been involved in fan fiction very heavily for many a year, like about 20 years or so, and I don't think that's a thing. Maybe I'm very, very sheltered. Maybe I don't know. I know that there used to be, like about 10 years ago when I was in the Firefly fandom and we were mostly on LiveJournal, there used to be these write a fic with people of color challenges. There was like some attention paid to that. So I suppose like everything, there weren't a lot of people of color on TV. There weren't a lot of characters, full stop. When Zoe from Firefly was this strong, amazing woman who was also an African-American woman, that was a huge deal. She was in a relationship with a white man. That was a big deal. So it was very much discussed and people were interested in that because there wasn't the representation that we strive for today. Yeah. There isn't enough of it today, but we're getting there. So I don't know. I haven't been, I didn't hear the panel. I don't know their argument fully, but just like from off the top of my head, just listening to this, I don't think that's true.
Well, it will be interesting to see how people react to that now that the new trailer is out, because there are definitely a few insinuations there to maybe both sides, but I think what he meant that in general it's disheartening that when you have a ship like Rey and Finn, there would still be people out there who would want her to be with someone who's definitely worse for her and also might be her family. And I think that's what he meant, because what he added later on was it's almost like the things you do in fandom as a fan are always exempt for criticism. It's if like as long as you're a fan, you're free to love what you love. No one can come and criticize that because it's your right to love that thing. And he specifically thought that might be a bit messed up because while it's true that everybody has the right to love what they love, you know, that tendency to want something that it's not good for a character just because of like what he perceives as like maybe, you know, and I definitely saw reactions after they, you know, after it was implied that Finn and Rey might get together. There was definitely some reactions that were more on the racist side.
I'm sure they were, you know, there are racist people in the world, so I have no doubt that this is true and it happened. But I don't think it's like, I don't think that's the reason why they want her to be with, you know, Kylo Ren, is his name?
Yes.
I think there's more to it than that. And also, I don't think we can get into it very deeply, but also about the thing that we can't be judged on anything we do in fandom. Fandom is about strong feelings, and it is about kind of losing yourself in something that is complete fantasy. Also, it's very complicated is what I'm striving to say. It's a very complicated issue. You can't just say that because it's also a place where people go to run away from things. It's a sanctuary. It's a place where a lot of women find their voice in a very young age, where they don't get that anywhere else but in fan fiction. So it's okay that they write crappy Mary Sue for a while because it's where they express themselves. You know what I mean? It's kind of, you have to see that it's okay. It makes a difference. And a lot of people who get into fandom culture and fan fiction stuff are very young. Young people are not in a position where they can defend, you know, they can say, oh, you're right, there is something very problematic about her being with a guy who's very toxic. They don't understand the concept of toxic yet. That's what I'm saying.
But I don't think he would judge something like a Mary Sue. I think he would judge something like the example I brought up, just in the same sense that people would use the argument of the right of speech when your speech is hateful speech. Like, not all speech should be allowed. You know what I mean? Like, it's like you said, it's super problematic. And he also mentioned, by the way, the Twilight books, because I've never read them, so I didn't know. But he mentioned that in the Twilight books, when you become a vampire, you turn into a white person, no matter who you were before. So
is that true?
Yeah, like, listen, I haven't read the books, so I can't tell you. It might be, you know, something more like subtle, like they become pale, but this is the phrasing he used, like, you become a white person no matter who you were before. And he said all of this is to say that when people argue that something is a matter of taste, you can reply many of it is about taste. But when it comes to certain things, that's just not true. It shouldn't be a matter of taste. Okay. You know what I mean?
Of course, I agree with that. But it's very complicated. The Twilight thing, I've read one book. It wasn't for me. It was very junior for my taste, so I didn't continue. And then it became this phenomenon, so I know about it. But the Twilight books should not be taken as an example of anything because they are fucking problematic from start to finish. They have issues with everything. Treatment of women, toxic relationships, you know, what you would do for a man, what you would lose of yourself. The way they talk about sex is so twisted. So many bad things in those books. So I'm not surprised, you know?
See, but you're saying it shouldn't be an example for anything, but it's a perfect example for a problematic fave because people love these books that are very problematic. So this is why, you know. And then what is super relevant for us and everything we talked about in the last few weeks, someone from the audience asked the panel, how do they feel about consuming popular media from problematic creators? And, you know, yeah, I know. And we can obviously think about a lot of examples. Just to be specific about that panel, it was 4 people out of 6. 2 couldn't be there because it was like the 3rd day and people got sick because that's what happens at a con. But one of them was Asian American. She's an editor at Tor Books. The other one was gay and Latinx or Latinx. I'm not sure how I'm supposed to pronounce it, but yeah. And one of them was African American, and I believe one of them was a gay woman. I'm not sure. Either way, she was a poet and she had a lot of interesting stuff to say. But it was definitely, you know, the best makeup of a panel to talk about these things. overall, it seems like they all agree the best approach with problematic creators is to find a way to not give these creators your money. Support artists who do good, and if to quote one of the panelists, steal shit from shitty people, you know? I love that sentiment because we keep hearing, anti-piracy stuff. But, there's some people that I would still like to consume their work, but I don't want Mr. Orson Scott Card to waste the money I'm giving him while I'm going to the cinema to see Ender's Game to support anti-LGBT groups,
Yeah. I just had a thought while you were talking. I'm sorry. I was just going in my head about this whole discussion we had. And I think that maybe I reacted. I do believe the things that I said, but I think I reacted from a very visceral place, exactly like what he said. I, as a fan and as a person who considers herself kind of a champion of fandoms and of especially of young people in fandom, I immediately went like, but no, that's not what is right. I think it's 1, 2, 3, 4, not your ABC. You know what I mean? I immediately started kind of attacking him. I didn't mean to attack, but I'm just sitting here thinking back on it. And I think I reacted from the gut exactly the way he was arguing. He's saying that it's very hard to discuss in a level-headed way these topics because we are all so into it, and that's exactly what happened. So I apologize to the panelists, to the listeners, but I still think that I'm right. I just think
it comes from a good place of being. That's the point. People take it so seriously because they're passionate about fandom. I think there's truth to both arguments. There's definitely love for diverse ships out there, and that's a fact. And me and you for the most part, surrounded by fans who belong to minorities, so that might be also a bit of like we live in this bubble of fans who love diversity. It's not,
but is it a bubble? I don't know. Look, this is a very big question. I don't think we'll get to the bottom of it right now. I have so many things to say about it. So maybe we'll try to talk about it later on.
Yeah, we will sleep on it. Oof. Okay, but here's something that we were waiting for. They even talked about body positive problematic faves.
Yes.
And this is when, things become super relevant to issues you feel deeply about. And that is a question that came from an audience member. And the panelists say that usually when it comes to, body positivity, problematic faves, one of two things happen. Either the character is being toned down for a film, so she's not as big, or an actor is becoming a bit I can't pronounce that word, but like a caricature.
You did it. Good for you.
Yeah, but I want to say caricaturized.
And you did it.
So that person then will get all the plus work, and that, I guess that might be actually the professional term, plus work, with like capital P. And of course the example for that is Melissa McCarthy. So the reaction to that was that the same panelist that you were so much against earlier.
I was not against.
I know. I'm teasing. He recommended My Mad Fat Diary as a show that has.
I love this guy. I love him.
Who's your best friend?
My bestie.
He recommended the show as a show that does a good job in terms of like body positivity representation, but he said that it will also love to just see a plus actress playing Rey on Star Wars or anything that doesn't put emphasis on the size of her,
Yeah, absolutely.
And
that's the goal. First, we want to see fat people just being treated like people. The issues don't have to be about them being fat. And I think
that's the same thing we said about mental illness. You just don't want, you don't want the character to just be that one thing. And by the way, again, going back to Orphan Black, one of the most famous sentences that Cosima says there, and she's a gay character, is like, my sexuality is not the most important thing about me. So you just don't want to see, like, a plus character being plus, or a mental ill character only being mentally ill. You want to see these people living their lives while also, dealing with the thing.
That's right. It can be their only, the only plot is about that. The thing about fat characters on TV, again, we are reaching a place where it's getting a little better, but I think it's like the last thing that someone would care about in terms of diversifying. They're working on other things, and I guess that's fine, but also the term fat, well, I kind of reclaim it, but a lot of people find it very offensive. I say, just use it, you're thinking it, just say it, it's fine, The term fat is the way Hollywood sees it and pop culture sees it. It's sometimes absolutely ridiculous. Sometimes they would talk about a person as being fat, and you look at her, and honestly, she is not fat at all. Maybe she's a little hippie. Do you remember, of course you remember, Tara McClay, the character in Buffy, Willow's girlfriend? There was so much talk about her when Amber Benson got cast in that role, because she doesn't look like this tiny person like everyone else in the cast. Like Sarah Michelle Gellar is the thinnest person alive. So they brought someone who had a bit of a hip, And it wasn't
She just had like feminine curves. My
yeah.
God. Like...
when they say curvy, she wasn't even under that curvaceous. She's not. She's just, 1-2 sizes over what Hollywood is considering a normal thing to be. So it's ridiculous to look at people who are considered fat and just say, oh my God, you guys are insane. This is not a fat person. This is not an unhealthy person. You have to stop everything and address the issue, And there's also a whole thing we can talk about: fat men on TV versus fat women on TV. A lot of times, if there is a person that is actually fat, a very curvaceous woman, a person who has the ass, the tits, the belly, the double chin, all of it, it's usually just played for laughs. Oh my God, on movies, on comedies, it's unbelievable how many times I see the trope. Just notice it, okay? The trope that if there's a guy and you have to show that he's like on the worst date of his life, or he's, he has to do something, so he goes through all these women, and the worst one is this fat girl. She's not ugly, she's not boring, she's not anything except fat. Oh my God, how is he going to last through this date, This trope is unbelievably spread out everywhere. You can see it on so many movies. It's either played for laughs and grotesque, as if being a fat person is such a rare thing, so grotesque, but most people in the world are fat. Most people don't look like Sarah Michelle Gellar. Most people in America don't look like that. So that's just insane. Right now, there's a new trope that's like the vivacious, curvy, amazing woman who is, feels good inside her skin, and she's just as sexual as the next girl, which is great. It's fine. But if it's a trope, then you're doing nothing. You're saying nothing. All you're saying is, oh, look, we put a fat girl there, but we treat her just like everyone else. She's just like every normal person out there. So is she normal or isn't she normal? Let's talk about it. Because you can be fat and you can be sexual. In fact, most human beings in this world are all kinds of things and also sexual, And you don't have to paint it in some kind of, oh, she's so gutsy, she's got it together. She doesn't have to get it together. The most screwed up people in the world still get sex. They still get dates. So, you know what I mean?
I do know what you mean, yeah.
Yeah. So this is me talking about that issue again.
No, but this is exactly why I thought you should have been in that panel,
I should have been.
I think you would love it because it just covered so many things we always discuss under one umbrella.
Yeah, it sounds like quite an amazing panel. One of the more interesting ones that I've heard from you.
Absolutely. They concluded the panel by saying that, again, create what you want to see, which, again, we agreed that it's true for all underrepresented minority, I would say minorities, but that's true for women too, and we are half of the world's population, but you know what I mean, underrepresented groups. And change is shown in numbers. So show up to support the creations you love. Show the money people that this thing is profitable. You know, just like we did with Wonder Woman, a movie starring a woman superhero that's about to become the most successful superhero movie of all times. And, you know, Gal and Patty were paid so little for that film. They're gonna up their contracts now so much, and you know, this is the only thing.
Hope so.
Yeah, and sadly, this is the only way to do that. It's like you have to create a thing, and you as a fan has to support the thing. So, you know, those who are up there deciding where their money will be going will understand that there are audiences, passionate audiences for all this representation. Something is gotta give, but the responsibility is mostly, sadly, on us.
The consumer, you say.
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely. It's like, yes, they always say, like, if you find an indie comic book creator that you love, buy his thing because, you know, he needs it. He needs it, and this is gonna be the thing that guarantees that he will keep doing what he's doing, or she's doing.
Yeah. Just pay for the content that you want in the world. Don't just go to the, you know, what Hollywood turns out and say, oh, the world is so unfair, no representation. Find the person who does what you want and then compensate. Consume that.
Yes.
Okay.
And again, the opposite. When it's someone who, you know, disagree with your ideals in life, do not give them your money.
Exactly. And if it's Woody Allen, don't go working with him.
Yeah.
Resist the urge to go to be on his movies. I'm talking to all you actors the A-listers that are listening.
It's actually bringing us full circle, because of course what we started the show with, but also, you know, what we said about whitewashing in the past. It's very hard to judge, and I know young actors who's just trying to make it and will leech to every opportunity they get because this field is so competitive. So as always, I feel like the real change here, I will not judge a beginner actor who's trying to make ends meet.
But what about the A-listers? Are you going to judge them?
That's exactly my next sentence, and what we said. That's also what we said on our whitewashing episode. The change will come from the actors in a position of power, who has the power, just like Ed Skrein did, to say no and make a difference in this industry.
Yes, and regarding that that notion of when you're in a position that you can afford to say no to things that you know are wrong, to people who are predators, and you know that about them. So I just see movie after movie with these amazing actors that I love and respect. You know, I always tweet about stuff like that, and on my Tumblr I reblog stuff like that, and I always use this hashtag: his talent is not more important than her safety.
Yep.
Just because he's a talented guy, just because he's very powerful in the industry, just because you like his work or you think that he's amazing in what he does. You know, people loved Bill Cosby so much for so many decades, love his show, but the guy is an unbelievable predator who's been hiding, and the industry was hiding all the wrongdoings, all the things he was doing to a woman after woman after woman through decades. So is that better?
And you know, there's been a lot of talk now with Harvey Weinstein about the complacency of, you know, the industry and people around him. And, you know, if we're in the business of giving shout outs, I would definitely mention, like, you know, if we're looking at a younger generation actress, Constance Wu, who's on Fresh Off the Boat. She's the leading lady of Fresh Off the Boat. Yeah. And her Twitter is amazing. Ever since this whole story broke, she's always like, men, speak up. This is when you do it. You will be held accountable just for remaining quiet. Because, you know, we are watching you, and we're watching who among you is speaking up now. Yeah. And who's just like, you know, and she's always been like that ever since I started following her. She's always, you know, she'll do it for whitewashing. She'll do it for women abuse. You know, she always speaks out about these things. And you could argue that she's in a even more difficult position because she's an Asian American actress. Yes. You know, And she's not scared to say what she's thinking. And it just, again, when I was saying earlier, we live in an era that the internet is on your side. Like, if you speak like her, the industry might want to screw with you, but the fans behind you, there will be an uproar. So, this is what I'm saying. I hope we're witnessing a new whatever. Like, we're witnessing a real change when people feel that they can at the very least speak up, because people will believe them more.
There's really nothing more important right now than doing that. Just not being quiet. Anything is better than being quiet and letting all of it just go on happening.
Yes.
Okay, so I think we've more than
we knew going in that it's gonna be a supersized episode, because it's almost like a special, Anyway, so this is our show, everybody.
Yeah, it's been quite a show. I didn't even realize in what directions it's gonna go, but it is what it is. We are women with a lot of opinions.
But that's my favorite part about cons. Like, some people would go for like the artist alley, some people would go for like the merchandise. I go for the panels, because the panels are where it's at in terms of like social relevance in pop culture. You know what I mean? So yeah.
Yeah.
I have to say, for me, time flew by. I think, like, I didn't feel like we were talking for nearly 2 hours, so hopefully that means something.
Okay, so this was our show. A lot more coming up, and thank you for listening.
As per usual, check our Tumblr page, because it has all the links to all the ways you can listen to us, a link to our Patreon if you feel generous, and that's about it.
Yep. Thank you for listening and supporting, and thank you, Chen. Bye.